Music isn't just background noise. It's what makes a film feel alive. G'day guys, today I wanted to talk about music, how I use music in all my films, how I use crescendos to bring my films to a close, and how you can apply these techniques in your films. Let's get started. Music has always been such a huge part of my life. I've been a musician for as long as I can remember, and when it comes to finding the right track for all my films, there's just this thrill that comes with it. I find that the right track can immediately set the tone, pace, and emotion for your film, which is why it's so important to get it right. When I look at some of my favorite films, one of the best parts of all of them is almost always the score. Using films like Interstellar, Inception, and Arrival as examples, some of the most famous scenes and some of my favorite scenes out of these films have often been not only because of the storytelling, but also because of the score that goes along with it. The journey that the music takes you on throughout the film and throughout some of these favorite scenes is just incredible. Having incredible storytelling and visuals paired with the right track and the right score just makes some of these films unstoppable. Some of the scenes in these movies have gone to be some of the best of all time, but would arguably not have been the same without the right music. So you can see why I'm so careful when it comes to choosing the right track for my films, because it's not just another layer or another element, it's like an entire character in itself, and it can really be the make or break of any film. Now I want to talk a little bit about a crescendo. Now this isn't going to be any new information for some of you, but a crescendo is an incredible way to build energy and build tension and emotion in your film, and it basically is just this ramp that is gradually leading to the peak or the crest right at the end of the film. Now, a lot of my films and videos I used to edit way back in the day would basically just build up to a drop and then edit on the beat. But filmmaking has changed and my approach to filmmaking has changed a lot. And one of my favorite techniques I like to use lately has been the crescendo. For a lot of my films now, especially some of my shorter ones, I really like to build this wave of tension that gradually builds throughout the course of the film that viewers just ride from start to finish. The shots get faster and tighter and filled with more energy, but it's really the score and the music that brings it all to such an incredible close. And then once the score brings the film to a close, I really like to end on a shot that lets people breathe and really lets people reflect on what it is that they just saw and take time to process. Now, all of this is fine, but it doesn't start with how you choose your shots or how you cut or your sound effects. What it really starts with is finding the right music. Now, I like to choose my music based on a few different things. Number one, the overall emotion of the track. How does it match my storytelling? Does it actually match what it is that I'm trying to create, or is it just an epic track for the sake of an epic track? Number two, is it going to make way for my voiceover? Like, is it really going to pave a path for the way that my voiceover goes, or is it just going to overpower it? Number three, the way the track starts. Does it have a proper definitive start to the track? Is it going to be a great starting point for my film? Number four, does it have distinct changes of pace? Does it have distinct kind of sections in the track that are going to make way for various chapters throughout the film? And number five, most importantly to me, how does it build throughout the course of the track and how does it end? Does it have a really strong build all the way through the course of the track, and does it have a really strong finish or really strong close to it? That last point for me is arguably one of the most important. It's something that I always look for when choosing a track. Does it have this kind of rising tension? Does it guide the users through the film, and does it keep them watching kind of like in anticipation? Now, the right track can do this. It can bring a crescendo to my film. So I'm going to play an example here, my 2024 wrap up. If you've already seen it, you can skip ahead, but this is going to give some of you a better idea of what I mean when I say crescendo. This year was different. I think it was a big year of learning for me, a big year of change. And not just learning about my craft, but more about who I am. At a time where my burnout seemed to be at its worst, I found solace in creating for myself and nobody else. This year I pushed myself to be more introspective than ever and question where I was headed, what I was doing and why I was doing it. I think you can so easily spend so much of your time putting one foot in front of the other without knowing you're heading. And so I suppose if there's one thing I'll carry with me into next year, it's this. Sometimes growth happens not in moving ahead, but in pausing to understand the path beneath your feet. Now, if we jump into the 2024 wrap-up timeline here, you can see that I've kind of got this double crescendo thing going on. So this is actually two separate tracks, both from Lens Distortions. So you can see that this one, this first track here, kind of guides the voiceover, which is this section here, to a bit of a crescendo. And then this last track here, you can see in the waveform that it really brings this montage section to a crescendo as well. So there's kind of like two build points there. So one, bringing my voiceover to a close right here, and then one that brings the entire track to a close right here. Now, the reason that I've got two different tracks here is because I wanted to create two distinct sections within the film without having them feel too disjointed. They are similar sounding tracks, but they both have a distinctly different feel to them. And I think having both of those separate tracks within this video created those two chapters that I was talking about before. So the first, like I said, being the voiceover section here, and the second being the montage section, which you can see makes way for a lot of quicker cuts and a lot more energy. And then the first section is where you can breathe a little bit more. You can really take the time to listen to that voiceover. Now, when it came to editing this, the first part was always going to be the voiceover. So I've always loved writing my own scripts and writing my own voiceovers. So this was definitely the first starting point for the 2024 wrap up. The second part was going to be finding the right track. Now, I tried a whole bunch of different music providers over the years, but I've found that Lens Distortions is the most alike to an actual film score. Now, I don't know what their composers are doing there, but they are creating some seriously wicked stuff. And you can tell that they are actually really passionate about filmmaking and about scoring filmmaking, because some of the stuff on Lens Distortions is the best I've ever seen. They do actually have sound effects as well, which is quite cool, having both of those coming from the same platform. Now, all of my favorite assets from Lens Distortions are in the description. You can check out the link. There's like 20 or something of my favorite assets, both music and sound effects, you can go and check out. Now, as I said before, I have my list of things that I like to look for when I'm browsing for tracks. So how it complements my voiceover, the overall tone, how it builds throughout the course of the film. So that's the sort of thing that I look for when I'm going through and looking through all of these different tracks when I browse Lens Distortions. One thing that I find quite handy to do when trying to find the right track is to isolate your voiceover and then set a loop point for it. And then you basically just loop it, and then you just have that continuing to play in the background as you're looking through all of your different tracks. That way you kind of get a bit of a preview on how it's going to come together. Now, when it comes to pacing, my workflow and editing style here has changed a lot over the last couple of years, and I'm sure a lot of other people's have as well. Now, my edits way back in the day used to just be rhythmic and all cut to either the snare or the kick, but it's changed a lot now. The tracks that I use are less driven by the rhythm and more driven by the melody and how it complements the footage. So I find it less important to cut to the beat and more important to make sure that my clips and my sequences are playing out to conclusion. So rather than being limited and cutting to your beat, you're more, allowing yourself to be a bit freer with the way that you cut. So you make sure that your shots are actually coming to a conclusion rather than cutting them too early or too late. I think the days of just cutting directly to a beat are starting to fade a little bit more, and we're starting to see this wave of authentic cinematic storytelling really finding its way onto short form and social films. Now, this has been incredible for me because I think we're starting to see this change of cinematic storytelling finding its way into socials and into short form. And it means that our tracks aren't limiting how we're editing, they're more elevating what it is that we're trying to create. So that brings me to probably one of my biggest pointers and biggest tips for filmmakers out there is find a track that's really going to complement your film, and make sure that your track is creating this wave or this story in and of itself that your viewers can ride. You know, you have this track that complements your visuals, but it also complements the story. You know, it's elevating your story every step of the way. Music isn't just a soundtrack, it's storytelling. Whether you're using it to build energy or create emotion or land a powerful ending, thinking about music first will change the way that you edit.